Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm so glad you could join me today because we're going to dive straight into the heart of something many English learners find challenging: how to get comfortable and confident speaking English in real-life situations. My name is Sam, and as a YouTuber specializing in motivation and language acquisition, I've seen firsthand how simple shifts in mindset and technique can make an enormous difference in how you speak. Now I want you to picture this moment. You're standing in a grocery store, at a coffee shop, or maybe at a networking event for work. Someone greets you in English. You know the words, you understand what they said, but your mind feels like it's racing at 100 miles an hour. Suddenly, even basic phrases seem to hide somewhere in the back of your mind. It's a universal experience for language learners, the dreaded speaking block. So let's break that down and figure out how to bypass it once and for all. First things first, let's talk about why speaking English in a spontaneous, real-life conversation can feel so daunting. It's often because we're juggling multiple pressures. We want to be understood, we don't want to embarrass ourselves by making mistakes, and we're trying to quickly recall vocabulary or grammar rules. Our brain sometimes sees this as a risk, triggering that fight-or-flight response. The key is to acknowledge this anxiety instead of letting it control you. A big part of fluency is learning to dance with that anxiety rather than ignoring it or letting it paralyze you. Let me share a quick strategy for that initial mindset shift. Psychologically, we know that labeling emotions can reduce their intensity. So if you feel your heart pounding and that wave of nervousness before speaking, silently name what you're feeling. I'm feeling anxious about speaking English right now. This act of labeling moves the emotional response from your limbic system to your rational brain, which helps you calm down. You can then remind yourself, yes, I'm feeling nervous, and that's normal. It doesn't mean I can't speak effectively. You'll be surprised at how this little internal acknowledgement can immediately lower the intensity of the fear. Let's move to another crucial aspect: setting realistic expectations. Many of us believe we need to speak perfectly, no grammatical errors, no awkward pauses to sound fluent. Let me tell you a secret. Even native speakers trip over their words, pause to think, and correct themselves mid-sentence. Perfectionism in language learning can become your biggest roadblock. Instead, shift your expectation from speaking flawlessly to conveying my ideas clearly enough to be understood. That small tweak relieves a huge burden and lets you focus on communicating rather than obsessing over every little detail. Now, how do we actually practice the art of spontaneous dialogue? One of my favorite methods is what I like to call the conversation snapshot. Pick a topic you're passionate about, maybe you love soccer, baking, or business trends. Then imagine someone has just asked you a question about that topic in English. Record yourself responding for 30 seconds to a minute. Don't prepare a script, just let the words flow. When you listen back, notice where you paused or struggled. Was it vocabulary? Grammar, pronunciation. That's your cue to do a quick, targeted review. Maybe you learn 3 new phrases or look up how to pronounce a tricky word. Then do the exercise again. Over time, you'll see the difference in your fluency and confidence, and it doesn't take more than a few minutes a day. Another powerful technique is to create a speaking bubble around your daily life. If your environment doesn't naturally require English, maybe you live in a non-English speaking country, you need to bring those spontaneous conversation opportunities to you. A simple way is to look for language exchange partners online. The key is consistency. Find someone you can chat with regularly, even if it's just for 10 or 15 minutes. And don't make it all about language drills. Talk about your day, your hobbies, the latest movie you watched. The more natural your conversations, the better you'll train your brain to handle real-life scenarios. Remember, speaking is a skill, and skills improve with frequency and variety. Let's dive into a practical psychological trick called social reward anticipation. Essentially, our brains are wired to value positive social feedback, like a smile, a nod, or a kind response. If you worry about embarrassing yourself by making mistakes, try focusing on the potential positive reactions you'll get when you communicate successfully. Maybe you'll make a friend, learn something new, or simply have a pleasant chat. Fixating on the positive outcome changes the narrative in your head from "I'm going to mess up" to "I might have a genuinely nice exchange here." That subtle shift in focus from the negative to the positive can dramatically change your confidence level when you open your mouth to speak. Of course, we can't ignore the power of listening. Speaking and listening go hand in hand. The more you expose yourself to how English sounds in natural settings, the more your brain internalizes patterns, rhythms, and common expressions. This might mean watching interviews, sitcoms, or even YouTube vlogs. Listen actively, pause to repeat phrases, focus on intonation, and try to mimic the speaker's flow. Active listening helps you pick up the nuanced aspects of conversation, like the tiny pause someone might take before emphasizing a keyword. You'll gradually incorporate these cues into your own speech without even realizing it. Let's talk about community and accountability. When you're on your own, it's easy to push speaking practice to the bottom of your to-do list. That's why finding a supportive community of fellow learners or native speakers can jumpstart your motivation. Join a local English club or start an online meetup group around a shared interest, like a book club or a discussion circle. When you have regular meetups, you'll find yourself looking forward to them as a chance to engage and learn in a comfortable setting. Over time, this consistent exposure to real-life conversation scenarios acts like a booster shot for your speaking skills. Now let's address the big question. How can I sound natural rather than robotic or rehearsed? The secret is to embrace your own personality in English. Sometimes, we try to sound like a textbook or memorize lines. That approach might work in a strict exam context, but it won't help you connect with people in everyday life. One tip is to incorporate filler words or phrases that you'd naturally use in your native language. In English, that might be expressions like "you know," "actually," or "let me think." These small phrases give you a moment to gather your thoughts and make your speech sound more organic. Of course, moderation is key. Too many filler words can be distracting, but a few peppered into your speech can help you feel more like yourself when speaking English. Let's also talk about error correction. We all hate being interrupted mid-sentence to be told we're wrong. It can throw off your whole rhythm. But at the same time, constructive feedback is essential for growth. My advice is to set clear boundaries with conversation partners or tutors. Either let me finish my thought and then correct me, or only correct major mistakes that could lead to misunderstanding. This way, you stay in the flow of conversation, but you still learn how to improve. Another effective strategy is self-correction. If you catch yourself making an error, just pause, correct it, and move on. It might feel awkward at first, but it shows you're being mindful about your speech, and it helps cement the correct form in your mind. I'd like to highlight a method I personally love: role-playing everyday scenarios. If you know you're traveling abroad soon, simulate a conversation at an airport check-in counter or a hotel reception. If you anticipate making business presentations, practice introducing yourself in a corporate setting. And don't be afraid to over-prepare. Rehearsing real-life scenarios builds your confidence because you've already lived the situation mentally. Then, when you actually encounter it, it feels strangely familiar, like a dress rehearsal for a play. And you'll typically perform much better when you're not walking into a situation cold. Another concept from motivational psychology that's worth mentioning is temporal self-comparison. Basically, it involves comparing your current abilities not to perfection, but to your past self. Ask yourself, where was I 6 months ago? Could I form coherent sentences? How often did I speak? Maybe you've improved more than you realize. Acknowledging that progress is crucial for staying motivated. It reminds you that you're on a journey, and the journey has forward momentum. If you find it hard to track your progress, keep a short audio diary in English every week or two. After a few months, go back and listen to early recordings. You'll probably notice significant improvement in flow, confidence, and even intonation. That sense of concrete progress is a powerful motivator to keep pushing through the speaking barrier. Now let's address a common pitfall: focusing too heavily on grammar perfection at the expense of conversational flow. Grammar does matter, but in real-life dialogue, fluidity and comprehension are often more important than being 100% precise. For instance, if you're 98% correct with grammar but can't maintain a comfortable flow, your listener might find the conversation stilted. On the other hand, if you're 70% correct grammatically but speak with confidence and clarity, you might have a more enjoyable and effective communication experience. Of course, the goal is to strike a balance, but never let fear of minor grammar mistakes stop you from actually speaking. Let's also recognize that different speaking scenarios require different levels of preparation. A casual chat at a coffee shop with a friend is low pressure. You can just let the conversation flow. But if you're attending a job interview in English or giving a presentation, you'll benefit from structured preparation. That means practicing key phrases, simulating Q&A sessions, and maybe even reviewing industry-specific vocabulary. When you walk into a high-stakes scenario armed with targeted prep, you reduce anxiety and significantly increase your chances of success. Because you're learning to speak in real-life contexts, don't forget about body language and facial expressions. Communicating effectively in English isn't just about the words. Your tone, eye contact, and gestures all play a huge role in how people perceive you. If you speak in a monotone voice with minimal expression, it can come across as unengaging or shy, regardless of how perfect your sentence structure is. Conversely, maintaining good posture, making appropriate eye contact, and using natural gestures can make you appear far more confident and approachable, even if your English isn't flawless yet. Let's take a moment to talk about celebrating your speaking wins. Every time you have a successful interaction in English, whether it's understanding a salesperson or joking with a colleague, take note of that victory. This reflection reinforces the idea that you can handle these conversations and that your skills are growing. Think of it like a bank account of positivity. Each successful interaction is a small deposit. When you face a challenging scenario, you can draw on that account, reminding yourself of all the times you've managed to communicate successfully before. I also want to mention the importance of variety in learning resources. Sometimes we get stuck in a rut using the same textbook or the same conversation partner. If you feel your progress plateauing, shake things up. Try a new podcast, join a different conversation group, or explore a new online platform that connects learners with native speakers. Novelty keeps your brain on its toes, helps you encounter new vocabulary, and keeps your motivation fresh. In psychology, we call this the novelty effect, a sense of renewed interest and mental engagement when we experience something different from our usual routine. Before we wrap up, let's revisit a key principle. Speaking is an active skill. Just like learning to ride a bike, you won't progress by only reading about bikes or watching videos of people cycling. You need to get on the bike and pedal, and yes, probably wobble a bit at first. But each time you try, you gain balance and confidence. The same goes for speaking English. The more you speak, the faster you improve and the more natural it becomes. Even if it's just 5 minutes a day, that consistent action compounds over time. Finally, I want to encourage you to be patient and kind to yourself. Language learning is a journey of small but significant steps. Sometimes it'll feel like you're sprinting forward, other times you'll feel stuck or even like you've taken a step backward. That's all part of the process. The important thing is to keep going, to keep speaking, to keep interacting, and to keep reaching out for those real-life moments where you can practice. Every conversation is an opportunity to learn, and every mistake is just a step toward better fluency. I hope these insights give you the tools and motivation you need to break the speaking barrier in English. Remember, it's not about perfection, it's about making steady progress and connecting with others in a meaningful way. So take a deep breath, embrace your nerves, and jump into that next conversation with confidence. The more you try, the more skilled you become, and before long you'll be surprising yourself with how naturally the words just flow. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm genuinely excited to see how your speaking skills transform once you apply these tips. Keep practicing, stay curious, and most of all, be proud of every step forward you take on this language learning journey. You've got this.